Hello and welcome to this edition of Tech Talk. My name is Eddie Ambler and my co-host is.
And I'm Leo Alvarado.
In this edition of Tech Talk, we will be talking about the Exadata Database Service and how to manage and patch and upgrade the elements. So what should you expect to be able to understand out of today's conversation? So today, during our conversation, we hope to be able to excite you about how simple it is to actually conduct patching and upgrades on the Exadata Database Service. The main learning points that you should grab is get a good understanding of the responsibility matrix, understanding what Oracle is responsible for versus what customers are responsible for. We will, in our discussion, describe customer managed maintenance tasks, and help you to understand the available management interfaces that you can use for patching. Between Leo and myself, we will explain and demonstrate how to use the console, the OCI Cli, and we'll touch upon the use cases where you might need to use dbasscli, which is the local utility tool to do patching. We'll review the prerequisites and best practices that you should follow for conducting database and GI updates and patching. We'll also introduce you to the automatic infrastructure management schedule, right? Show you how you can define that schedule to influence exactly when Oracle can conduct infrastructure management. And we'll show you how easy it is to identify the available patches that you can apply to your elements. We'll review how to patch the guest VMOS, how to apply patches to the GI layer and to the database homes as well. And ultimately there, we'll show you how you can view the history of patching in your environment. And throughout the conversation, we'll mix in demos that will show you how to conduct pre-checks and apply steps for applying the patches. So a packed agenda for a small amount of time. So one important thing is to really start the conversations to let you know that Oracle has really been growing its global footprint, right? So every time we have these discussions, there's another data center that's been added in the world to allow our customers to be able to build MAA solutions using our cloud services and to also be able to meet their regulatory and compliance needs where they might need to bring the cloud solution behind their data center walls or behind their geographic boundaries to meet their compliance rules. As you can see here, there are over 45 regions available globally. There's still another 7 that are planned, and that 12 of these regions are already interconnected with Oracle and Azure being able to directly talk to each other in interconnected regions. So what is the Oracle Cloud? I'll be brief in this section because we want to focus on patching, but as you would expect, the Oracle Cloud provides you with all of the IaaS elements that you would expect, such as compute, network, and storage. It also provides tools and interfaces for developers to conduct DevOps, low-code, automation using tools that they're used to, such as Terraform and Ansible, to be able to develop infrastructure as a code. At the application layer, we have the tools and services available to develop modern applications that might use serverless containers and all the integration tools to be able to easily integrate the components all the way to SaaS applications, which you've come to know and love from the Oracle portfolio. Throughout these applications, we've mixed in analytics as pre-integrated solutions, and we have our Oracle Analytics Cloud service, which gives you the ability to turn your data into information, regardless of where it is, ability to reach out to data that's on-premise in our cloud or in other clouds. And to wrap it all up, we have a good suite of governance, security, and tools that give you visibility from the edge of the customer transaction all the way down to the infrastructure details, and our ability to conduct multi-cloud. And at the center heart of it is our data management solutions. We have data management solutions that help with data processing, data lakes, data management, and database solutions that are available, such as our base database service, which is our VM-based service that can provide you single instance and 2-node racks, all the way up to our Exadata Database Service, which is our co-managed Exadata solution, which is where we'll focus our conversation today, and the fully managed database service, which we have the umbrella of Autonomous Database, which runs on top of our Exadata Database and cloud infrastructure. So now that I've kind of outlined what we are, let's just briefly review the available Oracle Database Cloud services. You can run the Oracle Database Cloud services in the Oracle Public Cloud or in your customer data center. So in the Oracle Public Cloud, as I mentioned, you have 3 services that are available for running the Oracle Cloud Database. We have our base database service, which runs on our VM systems, can run single instance, 2-node rack, up to 80 terabytes of database storage is available in this configuration. When you need a little bit more size, scale, processing power, this is where the Exadata Database Service on dedicated infrastructure service comes into play. Using the same Exadata infrastructure as you would have on-premise, but giving it to you with cloud automation services and the cloud economics and scale. For those customers who need a fully managed database service, this is where our autonomous database on shared or dedicated Exadata infrastructure services come to play, right? You're able to, again, get a fully managed database service that runs on the Exadata platform in either a dedicated infrastructure or as part of our shared infrastructure. One really critical point here that really adds value to the Oracle Public Cloud is that there is no minimum term for infrastructure, right? 48 hours is the minimum in time that you have to run it. And as far as the OCPUs, Cloud Economics allows you to increase and decrease the OCPUs as required. Wrapping it up, for those customers who need to be able to run the database platform behind their firewall to meet regulatory or compliance reasons, or maybe it's just latency reasons between applications that are going to remain on-premise, but you want to start moving to the cloud. This is where we have our Cloud at Customer offerings. Again, you can have the co-managed approach with our Exadata Database Service on Cloud at Customer, in which Oracle manages the infrastructure and the customers manages the guest VM OS, which includes the grid infrastructure and database homes, or they can take it as a fully managed service, again, using our autonomous database on Exadata Cloud at Customer. To wrap it up, Exadata runs everywhere. One of our latest announcements really extended our multi-cloud offering to not only be able to connect to other clouds, but to also be able to offer the Exadata Database Service directly as Oracle Database at Azure, directly in the Azure offering. It is very simple to navigate the OCI console, which is where we'll show you our patching capabilities. You simply go to our hamburger menu, click on it, select Oracle Databases, and then on the platform here, you'll see that you have a set of offerings that you can simply map on. So if you want to go to our Exadata Database Service, you'll click right there, Exadata Cloud at Customer, or Exadata on Oracle Public Cloud. And if you want to go to our base database service, you can click on that. Let's get into the main topic here, which is the Exadata Database Service managing the Exadata infrastructure. So I did tell you that Oracle manages this infrastructure, right? So let's look at this. Exadata Database Service uses a very simple cloud management model. Starting from the bottom up, Oracle owns and manages the infrastructure, right? That means all of the database servers, all of the storage servers, all of the internal network fabric up to the hypervisor, okay? So Oracle performs the infrastructure patching, the security scans, the security updates. Customers, though, they can schedule the maintenance windows for when that infrastructure maintenance can happen. Now, customers are not authorized to access the Oracle infrastructure. Above the hypervisor, customers subscribe to the database as a service. The customer manages everything above the hypervisor using cloud automation, whether it's via the OCI Console or the APIs. Cloud automation is provided to create, delete, patch, backup, scale up or down, OCPUs and resources, and so on. It also runs all of the Oracle-supported database versions up to 19C. We always recommend that you continue to refer to the documentation for the latest supported Oracle database versions as new releases are routinely released. Customers can install and manage additional software in the customer VM. This is usually a question that we are always asked. But more importantly, the customer controls who has access to the customer VM. Therefore, there's a clear separation of roles and responsibilities between what Oracle has access to versus what the customer has access to. The Oracle staff is not authorized to access the customer VM, which illustrates the point I was just making. The customer owns everything inside of the database, right? When we're talking at the data and schema layer. This means the data, the schema, the encryption keys. The responsibility matrix, because we're going to be talking about patching, let me organize this in a way that is going to align to how the patch bundles are made available. The infrastructure patches are Oracle's responsibility. So Oracle will patch that. At the customer responsibility layer, so you have the virtual machines in the Exadata VM cluster, which the customers will be able to patch the OS image, and they'll be able to patch the grid infrastructure image, and also be able to patch the database hosts. So let's look at a little bit deeper as we start to really understand, what is patching, and then we'll jump into how we do the patching. So as we look here, Oracle is managing the infrastructure as we discussed, and users manage the maintenance tasks that are inside of the guest VM OS. So let's look at the Oracle Managed Infrastructure Update tasks. They will apply the quarterly infrastructure updates to the physical computes and to the root VM on the database server. They'll also patch the Exadata storage servers, the internal network switches, the PDUs, the ILOM interfaces, and all firmware and BIOS. So these are all activities and tasks that you used to do on a do-it-yourself model. These are things now that are offloaded and done for you on your behalf using cloud automation by the cloud operations team. In the user managed maintenance updates section, customers patch the database home software. They patch the GI, the grid infrastructure. They patch the operating system of the VM. As we'll discuss, we don't just give our customers these tasks, right? We actually provide cloud automation to execute those, and we will actually leverage those and demo those in today's conversation. So let's, again, dig into infrastructure patching. There are two infrastructure update types. Oracle provides quarterly updates, which include one or more of the following. You can get new versions of the Exadata image, the latest security or other essential patches for the infrastructure components, updates for the cloud software components that run on the infrastructure, and also the monthly critical infrastructure updates. What we're doing here is we're providing updates for severe vulnerabilities to the infrastructure software with CVSS scores that are greater than 7. And we'll drill into both of these in the upcoming slides. So let's talk about the infrastructure maintenance process just a little bit, in particular, focusing on the Exadata quarterly bundle updates. The maintenance process for the database servers is done in a rolling manner by default. Updates are applied only to one database server at a time and not to the virtual machines. Database servers are shut down and updated and restarted one server at a time while the other servers remain online. This allows the database service to be available even though we're doing maintenance on one of the customer members. Database connections are drained prior to shutting down each database server. So when you're defining your services, right, one of the parameters that you can define is drain timeout. If you do not define it, we use the default value of 180 seconds as the drain timeout. So we are allowing for graceful failover of connections that exist on the server that we're preparing to patch so that they can move over to the other compute node and continue to provide continuous uptime to your applications. For the storage servers, again, it's done online in a rolling manner by default. After all the database servers are updated, the storage servers are shut down, updated, and restarted one server at a time, while the others remain online for the same reason as the database servers. That way, as we're doing maintenance on either the database server or the storage server farms, the service is always remaining available and online. So storage server updates do not impact database server availability. ASM high redundancy is used to ensure that while we are conducting maintenance on one of your storage servers, that your data still has HA protection, right? We use high redundancy, which guarantees 3 copies of the data. So even if we take 1 copy of the data offline, there are always 2 additional copies of the data just in case there's a disk failure, storage server failure, or something that requires us to provide protection. Now, I've talked about the default being rolling, but you now have the ability to select your preference as non-rolling for infrastructure maintenance as well. Now, if you select non-rolling for the infrastructure maintenance, what will happen is that it will apply to everything. The database servers, the storage servers, so everything will come down, everything will be patched, everything will be brought back up. You cannot pick non-rolling at this point for just a database or just a storage server. So let's talk about the other type of process, right? Which is the monthly critical infrastructure updates. Oracle's providing the patches monthly, and the difference here is that these patches are for severe vulnerabilities for the infrastructure software with CVSS scores greater than 7. Oracle will attempt to apply the critical security updates within 21 days of its availability. Customers can reschedule this patching, but they must get it done within the 21-day window. For the Exadata Database Service in the public cloud, critical security updates are applied automatically online via K-Spice technology and cannot be deferred or rescheduled. For cloud at customer, as I discussed, the monthly security maintenance can be rescheduled to another date in the 21-day window that begins after the 15th of each month. If the day that is default schedule for that security patch doesn't work for you, you can go in and move that date as long as you stay within the 21-day window. So critical storage server security updates, similar to the updates for the database and storage servers, are done in a rolling manner and are not expected to affect database availability. If a monthly critical security update will affect the database server availability, Oracle will notify you prior to applying the update. So you will be notified if a security patch is required to be applied and it cannot meet the online process. Normally, you will receive a minimum of 2 weeks advance notice to help you plan for these updates. So let's look at it. The first thing that we should probably look at is, how do we schedule the automatic infrastructure maintenance? I mentioned to you that Oracle does the infrastructure maintenance, but that you could actually schedule it. So if we were to navigate to our Exadata infrastructure using the OCI Console, we could then click on Edit Maintenance Preferences, which brings up a page where we simply says configure maintenance method. We'd say, hey, well, how do we want to do our infrastructure maintenance method, rolling or non-rolling? We make our selection, right? And then there is another choice that we can make. If we've chosen rolling, we can enable custom actions before performing maintenance on DB servers. Where this is useful is if you have applications that you need to conduct actions on so that they gracefully switch over their connections or gracefully shut down and are prepared for the maintenance, right? So not all applications are modern and tied into the notifications that the cluster sends out to tell it, hey, we're preparing to shut this node down. So for those apps, you might need to take manual actions, even actions that you've scripted, but you have to take in before each node can be patched. The custom actions allow you to do this. It has a timeout default of 30 minutes, can go to a maximum of 120 minutes. So just a really easy way to use the cloud automation that's available and tie in your custom actions. So even though Oracle is starting this infrastructure maintenance, once that maintenance starts, you can subscribe for notifications. You then have the timeout that you pick here between 30 and 120 minutes to do the actions between each nodes. And therefore, that's how custom actions can be brought into play with your infrastructure maintenance. Okay, you can extend the timeout. Let's say you picked 30 minutes to start with and you decided, hey, you know what? It's taking me a little longer. I need another 30 minutes. You can actually extend the time while you're working. And vice versa. If you finish early, let's say you set your timeout to 2 hours and you finish your custom actions in an hour, then you can simply choose to resume the maintenance and the infrastructure maintenance will resume. But not only can you choose rolling or non-rolling, but you can also then specify the schedule, right? You can choose which quarters your infrastructure maintenance will happen in, what month, what week, what day, what time. And you can select a desired maintenance window lead time, meaning how many weeks of lead time notice that you need that you want Oracle to notify you that it's going to do this maintenance. So again, this gives you great flexibility to say, maybe you are a customer that knows that you never want to do infrastructure maintenance in December or in January because those are your big Black Friday months where you're in a freeze. Well, you could simply uncheck December and January as available months to do your quarterly patching. But our recommendation is that you select at least 2 in case, there's something that pushes your maintenance into one of the other months.
Eddie, what about if I want to change the schedule for upcoming maintenance task?
That's a great question. So if for customers who've already set their maintenance schedule and the maintenance is coming up, then you can come back to your infrastructure details page. So if you look on here on the screen, you'll see that we've got our infrastructure methodology as rolling, and we've got a maintenance that is scheduled to come up. So what we would do is where it says next quarterly maintenance, there's a link that says view. You'd click on that view link and it would bring up this maintenance page where you can see that the next monthly security patch is scheduled for 2 a.m. Eastern. We could click on that link there and it would allow us to reschedule it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so this is great. Now the next question is, how often do we have to patch the infrastructure?
I like the question. Okay, so let's look at the policy, right? First of all, infrastructure maintenance is not optional. It is mandatory. So although I'm telling you that there's some wiggle room to adjust when the customers patch, right, it is mandatory. Once your infrastructure maintenance is scheduled, right, the contacts on the infrastructure contact list are emailed notifications. Customers can also be notified by configuring event notifications. If you have not specified a preference for the maintenance, a default schedule will be selected, which will be at least 2 weeks lead time before they do patches. So to answer your question directly, it's the details I was giving. Customers can choose to reschedule infrastructure maintenance to a date that is no more than 180 days from the prior infrastructure maintenance. And if it's a security patch, then it must be completed within a 21-day window. So those are the two timeframes that apply to when does a customer need to patch by. That answer that question for you?
Thanks, Eddie.
There's a customer context here. So whenever actions are being done on the infrastructure, whoever is in this customer contacts, this is one way for you to be notified. But the Oracle Cloud also has notifications that you can subscribe to that any group of people can receive notifications, and you can tailor it to just what you need. All right. So let's talk about the prerequisites and best practices just a little bit before we jump into how we patch the GI and the database software. So pretty straightforward items, which I'm sure you do today. Back up your database before you apply any updates to the DB home. Use the OCI management interfaces to perform your update and patching operations. Always run your pre-check before you apply patches. The value of the pre-check is that it will check to see if there's any things that will stop your apply from succeeding, and it will also generate fix-up scripts that you can then go to use to correct any of those items that would prevent you from a successful apply. Because what you don't want to do is go into your maintenance window, and that's the first time you find out that there's something that needs attention before you can apply. So this is a great way to get that pre-work confidence that when your maintenance window comes, you will be successful. You want to make sure that all servers and databases and instances are up and running, right? That you don't have infrastructure that's offline that, in other words, will not be able to be patched. You want to take care of those kind of maintenance problems before you patch. From a space perspective, you would want to make sure that your GI home and your database home have free space to be able to handle the update. So we have a guidance here that says, just make sure that your /U01 and U02 have 15 gigabytes of free space before you start patching. Our recommendation to patch a database to a new version is to move the database to a database home that is running the desired patch version instead of updating the current database home. We also want you to ensure to update the grid infrastructure first, right? Before you update or create a database home. The reason is your GI level dictates the highest level that your database home can be. So if you update your GI home first, you'll be able to update your database homes to the latest and greatest available patches. Okay, plan to run the patch operations at a time when they will have minimal impact on your users. And again, run the pre-check function in advance to validate that your system is ready. So there are just a couple of scenarios where you might have to manually do a GI patch. And that's if we need to do an OJVM patching, daylight savings time patching, or there's some critical emergency patch that it's not part of the bundle, but deemed it critical that you need to do right away. We'll show you how to do manual patching in the event that you run into one of these scenarios. Let's look at the Exadata Database Service patching and updates. And, how do I find my patches? How do I look at the patching history? Let's start with finding the current patch levels, right? So again, we started our VM cluster. Right there at the bottom on the right, you see versions, right? So from our VM cluster, we can see the Exadata image version that we're on. We can see the grid infrastructure version that we're on. We can see the database version for any databases that are launched on this VM cluster. And we can see whether there are any available patches. That link that says view updates, if we click on it, it'll bring up the updates page. The updates page is broken into two sections. Updates that are geared for the VM cluster. This is where you'll find your grid infrastructure and your Exadata image patches. And we'll go into both of those more in the upcoming slides. And then there's the database home patches, right? You'll notice that you can see not only the latest available patch for your database home, but the last N-3 versions as well. Now, to give you just a little bit more visibility, in that view, that particular VM cluster only had a couple of patches available, but I wanted to show you the fact that for the Exadata image, right, which also contains the OS. So when we talk about patching the guest VM OS, it is included in your Exadata image. In the update description, you could see that this particular one is a 22.1.16 version, right? So this is in the line of the family of Linux 7. You'll also see that, we have the quarterly bundle patches that show up with the Exadata image there as well, right? In this case, it's a 23.1.6, so it's showing you the latest. If you look to the right, the release dates are always there. So if you ever have any questions as to which patch is the latest version, you can do that. So you'll notice that there are two Exadata images that are for the virtual machine OS, right? One was 22.1, the other one is 23.1. So this is the Linux 8 latest version. So if you are wanting to stay on Linux 7, you'll continue to patch your OS using the 22.1.x series of updates as they come out. And if you want to go to Linux 8 for your OS, this is where you would move to the branch of 23.1.x. And again, for the grid infrastructure, right, if any patches that are available there, they actually have their own component name of grid infrastructure. So they're very easy to see. If you look down further on the screen, you'll see that similar to the database patches, the grid infrastructure patches, there's the October release that's on the screen. There is the July release that's on the screen. So as they come out, they're made available here as well. So what about the history view? On the right side of the screen, you'll see there's updates and then there's update history. By simply toggling to update history, this page will come up, and I'll show this to you in the demo here in a minute, and you'll be able to see all of the patches that have been applied, and not only which patches were applied, but also if they were pre-checked and the state that they were pre-checked and when, okay? So you're able to, from the history view, you could say, which patches have I pre-checked, which patches have I applied, and how did I apply those patches? And also if the operation was successful or failed. Same thing for the patches against the database home. So update history is a very easy way to tell, where all the elements of your infrastructure are. So let's take a look at a quick demo of how to find it. So again, we start our navigation, our hamburger menu, we click on Oracle Database. We then, in this case, pick the desired Exadata Database Service that we're wanting to find. This brings us to the VM clusters page, where we validate that we're in the right compartment that our infrastructure resides in. We pick the VM cluster name that we want to patch. And we actually saw the screen, right? This is the VM cluster screen. I walked you through the fact that the image is there, the grid infrastructure version patching is there, the database version is here, and I showed you we can get to the available updates by clicking on this View Updates link. In the Updates page, it says, since I am only on grid infrastructure 1911, that I can patch to 1918 for my grid infrastructure, and it also tells me that there is a new version of the Exadata image of 22.1.8 that I could use as well. For the database homes, you can have the Oracle standard database software images that you can apply to your environment, or you can use custom database software images. Okay, so the patch description tells you which patch it is. You can see that they're clearly labeled, and all the way to the right, you see the release date, right? So if you have custom software images, same thing, right? So as a customer, you can define an image set, the base RU plus one-offs as a custom database software image. And then whether you're doing it through the UI or APIs or through Terraform, right? Through cloud automation, you can be guaranteed that that image is used that include all your one-offs that you have. So again, update history. I walked you through how you can see what's available for the VM cluster, the components, whether it's an Exadata image, a grid infrastructure. We talked about finding how it's applied or pre-checked, and what version, and the status of that action, whether it was applied, whether it failed, whether the pre-check passed or failed, and so forth. Okay, same thing for the database homes. You could find the names there of the patches, the operation type that was done against that patch, whether you pre-checked it or applied it, the version that was applied, the result of that action, and then the end date. Like when did it actually get pre-checked? When did it actually get applied? And that closes out the demo of how to find your available patches and viewing your patching history. Leo, can you maybe walk us through what using the OCI CLI and REST APIs looks like for doing some of these similar actions?
Yes, so that's correct, Eddie. So whatever you can do in your OCI console, if you're looking into automating or scripting, you can also call OCI CLI commands and REST APIs. So here, the CLI, it mirrors the essential functionalities found in the console and introducing an array of additional commands, like if you're looking to the capacity to execute scripts or extending your console's functionality. So there are several ways on how you can launch OCI CLI. So the easiest way is through the Cloud Shell. So from the same console as Eddie had shown a while ago. So if you see that IDE icon at the upper right, so there's a Cloud Shell button that lets you trigger a Cloud Shell. So the Cloud Shell, it's a CLI that is pre-configured with your credentials and ready to use immediately within the Cloud Shell. Another way is you can also deploy an OCI CLI client. So if you go to the Oracle Marketplace, so you just download the Oracle Linux Cloud Developer image. So that one comes with a pre-installed OCI CLI. So now let's look into how you can easily list available patches and updates available for your VM cluster. So on the right side, you'll see an example on how to use the command and the generated output on how to check available patches or updates. So what's important to remember here is that different database cloud services have their own specific command structures. Now, on the left, you'll see the required parameters. So we just defined what each parameters refers to. So you'll see there for exadbd, your cloud-vm-cluster-id, that's the OCID of your cloud VM cluster. And then for exadbc at C, the vm-cluster-id, that's the OCID of your exacc VM cluster. Now, what's important here is the update type. So when you list, you have an optional parameter whether you wanted to include the update type. So the update type refers to the type of the updates, whether it's a grid infra patch update, OS patch update, or DB home patch update. Now, if you want to look into the command reference link, so you can just simply scan the QR code and it will redirect you to the our documentation for this listing of available patches. Now, let's go with REST API. So you've seen how you run it in OCI CLI. So you can also call a REST API to list down or get all the available updates and patches for your VM cluster. So same thing, if you look into to the right, so you'll see an example of the REST API call for the listing of the patches. And then again, it's important to remember that there are two different sets for database cloud services. So you'll see the API reference for the ExaDBD and ExaDBC at C. So for the required requirements, you just need to provide the OCID of both of the cloud VM cluster for your ExaDBD and ExaDBC at C. Then for the command reference documentation, so you can simply scan the QR code to the API reference for the list cloud VM cluster updates.
Thank you for that, Leo. So let's jump in a little bit more. So you're starting to get a great feeling now for how to patch, right? We showed you what to patch. Now we're going to move into the grid infrastructure software. Updating the grid infrastructure, which we call the GI, is very simple, actually. Yeah, you can update the GI using the OCI Console or REST APIs like Leo was just showing, right? You choose your desired grid infrastructure version. As always, run your pre-check prior to your maintenance window to validate your system readiness. As a reminder, the GI update is performed in a rolling fashion with only one node being updated at a time, unless you choose to actually do a non-rolling update. Database instances in the VM undergoing grid infrastructure update are not available during that window of time, right? You can monitor the progress of the GI update operation by viewing the associated work requests. So in the console or through the APIs, you can see the work request there to give you a status on it. So let's demo what it takes to patch the GI. So as you would imagine, hit the hamburger menu, select Oracle Database, select which Oracle Exadata Database Service you're going to patch, right? Make sure you're in the right compartment. We select again the VM cluster where we want to patch that GI at. We are going to navigate down to the updates available link, right? So we're going to hit that view updates. It brings up the updates page. So in the VM cluster area, we're going to find the patch that's for a grid, right? It's a patch. It's going to take us to version 1918. It has not been pre-checked. See, the pre-check says NA. So the last three dots on the end are our action buttons. Click on it. It brings up another subset of menu. You can see that right there, there's the pre-check. So you select pre-check. You confirm that you want to run the pre-check. And voila, just like that, you are now pre-checking your GI. You'll see that on the updates page, the state now changes from available to checking. Okay, when it's done, the state goes back to available. And if you notice, the last successful pre-check now has a date. So we come back to our actions menu, right? We can now click apply grid infrastructure patch. It gives us the confirmation and off to applying it goes. Okay, so state goes to applying. It tells you that it's picking up this operation is rolling because that was our preference. If I look at the Exadata VM cluster details by just clicking there, I'll see that my cluster state has an orange icon and is in the updating state. And that the database on it also is in updating, right? So all the resources are in the updating state. And in the patch area under version, even now it doesn't say available, it tells me that my VM cluster is being patched. So this is kind of how I know this status. Once it's done, the state for all of these items goes to available. So that was actually GI patching. You see how simple cloud automation made that? If I had to do that manually, that would have been hundreds of commands, lots of coordination, commands for stopping and starting things. Cloud automation actually manages and orchestrates the starting and stopping of all services as it rolls through from node to node, applying the grid infrastructure patch. So again, we can validate this in our history by clicking on the history here. Now we can see that our GI patch of 1918 shows up here as applied, and it has a date that it was done. So that was very easy.
So remember Eddie showing you how to do the pre-check and apply through the console. So here you'll see the example if you want to do it via the OCI CLI. So at the right, the command is just OCI DB cloud-VM cluster update -update-ID. The update ID refers to your patch or update OSID. And then the dash update dash action, this one refers to the upgrade action like pre-check or apply.
And as usual, he's got the QR codes there for you able
Yes.
to look at it. So let's look at the next one, which is patching the database home software, right? As we discussed, customers can use Oracle Provide database software images or custom database software images to database to home. So there's really two options to update the database home. Option one is update an existing database home to the desired patch level, which updates all of the databases using the database home at the same time. Sometimes this is not convenient. So the recommended approach is to create a new database home with a desired patch level and use our move database function to move the database to the new home. If you're going to be upgrading a database home, you create a new database home with the desired release version, and we move the database to the new database home using the upgrade function, which I will show you in the demo. So using the move in function is the quickest way to patch or upgrade a database. Database home update process provides a pre-check step and an apply step, just like the GI process did. Okay, note that the apply process also runs the pre-check. So even if you ran the pre-check 2 weeks ago, before we start applying an update, there will be a pre-check process. So this is just a note for you to be aware that that will be run. So let's demo how it's done. So we again navigate to our database, navigate to the desired database service, brings up our cluster, make sure we're in the right compartment, pick our VM cluster. So now we are to our very familiar page, right? And we know where all of our patch levels are, and we know how to get to our updates available link. So we click on that view updates link, brings up our update page. This time we're not looking for VM cluster, we're looking for database home. So we go down to that section and we say, well, which type of patch do we want to put on our database home? A standard patch or a custom database software image. We look at the patch description to select the patch that we want. We can also look at the versions to find the version that we want. Once we decide, hey, we want to go to January 2023 19C, click our actions button, just like with GI, and you'll see similar choices. Start with pre-check. You get your confirmation, tell it to run the pre-check. It has the same state like in GI. It says the state now says it's checking. When it's done, right, the state goes back to available. Okay, if we look in our history, we'll be able to see that the pre-check now has a state of pre-check passed, and we have a date that tells us exactly when it was done. Okay, so now whenever you're ready to actually patch, not a problem. You go back to the actions item. Instead, this time we'll pick apply as our action. It'll say confirm that you want to apply, and it'll remind you when your last pre-check was. And there you go. You're off and running. Your patch now shows as applying for its state. You can check the VM cluster details. So even though the VM cluster is available in this case, note that the database home is in updating state. And when it's done, the database home becomes available again. And the database version now is no longer 1911, it's now 1918. So just like that, you updated your database home. Now that you've updated the home, right, let's move the database to that new home, right? Let me show you the demo of that. So under more actions, you'll see there's a couple of choices there, right? So one of them is move to another home. The other one is upgrade. For the cases where we're going from 19C to 19C, just a newer version, what we're going to use is move to another home, right? In that case, we pick our newly created 1918 home. We click on Move Database, and we confirm that we want to move that database by clicking it. The database will go into a status of updating, and when it's done moving, it's made available. So just with a couple of clicks, you've actually moved this database from 1915 to 1918 in this particular case. And in the database version on the database page, right, you could see the version there, and you can see the database home that it's using. So the last thing that I wanted to show is the scenario where you're moving a database from, let's say, from 12C to 19C, right? this is the case where you would choose the upgrade option that you see in this dropdown. And you would pick the upgraded database home. The difference is there are a few steps that happen on the last node once the database is coming up to make sure that the catalog is upgraded and that all the elements are validated. So with that being said, Leo, if you can maybe just now walk us through using CLI, that'd be cool.
Okay, so the command for doing the upgrading of the DB home in OCI CLI. So there's a common command across the database cloud services. So meaning this one works with either exadbd or exadbc at C. So the command is just OCI db dash home update. And then you just need to provide the DB home ID, which is the OSID of your database home. And then there's a parameter here. It's called dash DB dash version. So the complex type refers to the JSON file. So this must be a valid JSON file and can be provided as a string on the command line or pass it as a file using the said direct full path syntax. So this is the sample command. So it's just calling the OCI db dash home update dash db home ID, and then replace it with your db home OSID, and then dash db dash version, and then put the full path for your JSON file. And then you just need to, you can easily replace the action type there on the JSON file. Let's say if you want to do the pre-check, and then after the pre-check, you can do the apply. And then there's a QR code here come in handy for you to scan to the command reference link.
Awesome. Which brings us to the third and final component of patching, which is patching the guest VM OS image updates. So as we discussed, the Exadata image contains the virtual machine OS updates. So the console will display the 4 latest Exadata image minor versions. The minor version updates can now also be done from the OCI Console as well as the REST APIs, as long as the current Exadata image version is 19.2 or higher. Note that the image update feature is not available if Exadata infrastructure maintenance is scheduled to start within 24 hours. So to avoid any conflicts, if you've got an upcoming infrastructure maintenance within that window, it won't let you update the image at that point in time. Okay. When you apply a patch, the system runs a pre-check operations as we discussed to ensure that you are ready to go. So let's look at patching the VM OS. So similar to the other 2 actions, we go to our database, we pick the desired Exadata database version service that we're going to patch. We make sure we're in the right compartment. We pick our VM cluster name that we want. On our VM cluster version, right, we know how to find the versions that we are on, and we know how to get to the available version. So we click on our view updates, and we come back here. So remember that the OS patch is in the Exadata image. It's part of the Exadata image bundle. Okay, so we find the version that we want, click the actions button, and guess what? We run pre-check. So you confirm that you want to run the pre-check. It does the same thing, goes into the state of checking. When it's done, it goes to available. If you check in your history, you'll be able to see that that pre-check has passed, right? And you'll be able to see when that pre-check actually finished. So if we turn back to updates and we click on our actions again, now that we've run our pre-check successfully, we can choose to apply the Exadata OS image update. Guess what? We confirm that we want to do it, and it goes into an applying state. We can check our update history, and we could see that the patch was applied with a rolling apply, and we could see when it ended and validate that the state is truly applied. We can also go to our Exadata VM clusters details to see that the VM cluster is available, and we now see that our image is truly updated to 22.1.8. For those cases where you manually need to patch, we'll just introduce you to the database utility as our last parting function.
For the dbasscli, maybe we can move into the actual command Yep. So here are the different dbass CLI commands. Like if you want to list the available patches, if you want to conduct upgrade actions like doing a pre-check operation before the apply, and this is also a sample command for applying the GI patch, and where you can validate the infrastructure patch applied. And then on the next set of commands, so these are dbass CLI commands to manually patch the database home. So same thing as what we have shown a while ago. So this is how you list the available patches. Of course, best practice is to conduct the pre-check operation before applying the patch. And then the third one is the command for the actual applying of the updates for the database home software. And I guess we could also share, Eddie, the additional resources.
Absolutely. And, again, the only time you really need to use the manual patching is one of those earlier scenarios I gave you that, requires the manual patch, like OJVM patches, daylight savings patches. You saw that we were able to do all the other patches using the UIs and APIs. So we will be looking for your more questions and feedback from you guys. We'll be looking at our Slack channel. So the resources, where can you find more information for solutions on the Exadata Cloud Service? Leo, if you could just take us through this and how to get connected to our Slack channel, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so we have a public Slack workspace. It's Exadata Database Service. So this is where we uploaded all our get started guides, how-to videos, even the demos that we have shown a while ago. This is where we upload all our how-tos. We also update our Tech Talk replays here. And then we shared our feature blogs. And then if you want to learn more about OCI CLI commands and dbass CLI, in our public Slack channel, we also have two chatbots that you can add to your Slack. It's Ask Debbie and Ask Ed. So Ask Debbie is our chatbot for helping you on your dbass CLI inquiries. And then Ask Ed is for the questions that you have for OCI CLI. And then we've also added here the QR codes that you can scan over to redirect you to the API reference that we have used in the demo. So this is how you can update your cloud VM cluster. So it shows both for Exadata Database Service on dedicated and Exadata Database Service on cloud customer. Yeah, so this is how you join our Slack workspace. So just scan the join link, log in with your email account to Slack, and then set up your 2FA, and that's it. So welcome to our workspace. So if you have any questions, or if you do have follow-up inquiries about our tech talk, you can also post your questions there, and then we're happy to help you.
Thank you for your time. I hope this discussion was valuable to you. Again, my name is Eddie Ambler, and my co-host is.
I'm Leo Alvarado.
Until we see you next time. Thanks again for joining.